Hey, this is PxP, artist discussions about process and practice. PxP is brought to you by the City of Chico Arts Commission, serving our Chico community through arts advocacy and partnerships that promote our community's artistic and cultural development, and the 1078 Gallery, a nonprofit, volunteer-run organization offering exciting exhibitions of contemporary and experimental artworks in visual, musical, literary, film, and performance mediums. This is episode 2 with Maddie Hinckley, Michelle Ott, and Valerie Rose. Joining us for this conversation is Maddie Hinckley. Maddie is an educator and artist hailing from Virginia. They received their BFA from Virginia Commonwealth University in Craft and Material Studies, studied at the Krenov School of Fine Woodworking in Fort Bragg, and received an MFA in Studio Arts from Maine College of Art and Design. Maddie currently works as an associate professor in the art departments of Butte College and Chico State. Michelle Ott. Michelle is the Visual Resources Curator in the Department of Art and Art History at Chico State, and Michelle is currently working on a book called Outer Space is Closer Than Antarctica, an illustrated memoir of the life and science at McMurdo Station. Also operates the Postcard Machine, which includes a Postcard of the Month club. And Valerie Rose. Valerie is deaf and was born with single-sided deafness. Her first language is American Sign Language, ASL. The deaf world is very visual, so she feels most connected to drawing, painting, and using her hands. As an activist, she uses her art to support causes that matter most to her. She is the project coordinator of the Sign Mural Project. She is also an ASL teacher and the owner of Sign Club, a small community center where people can learn about ASL and deaf culture. All right, I'm going to start with a question of what brought you to Chico. And I'm going to start with Maddie because you came the farthest.
I did. So I moved to California first from Virginia to go to school for carpentry. So I was like mid-20s. I'd been working in coffee for a really long time. And then I got to my late 20s and I was like, I don't know if this was the plan. So I wanted a career. I wanted a stronger path. My brother was going to school for historic preservation carpentry. And he was like, my school has like a fine furniture program. Do you want to do that? And I was like, that sounds fun. Knowing nothing about it, never having worked with wood or materials at all. So I just drove cross country and started going to school first in Eureka and then in Fort Bragg for 2 years studying furniture making. And then I met someone. Hi. And had planned to move back to Virginia, and that kind of got squashed. Luckily, happily, fortunately. So after a little bit of back and forth, I finally came to Chico because my partner is from here. So
Here you are.
here I am, joyfully, happily. Hi, Chico. You're great.
Michelle.
How I came to Chico?
Yeah.
Okay.
What brought you here?
I mean, initially I moved here with Sean, my partner. I also moved to California for love.
It does that.
Beautiful.
And to Chico more for affordable housing, but also because we knew and were sort of a part of peripherally some music and art community that we were already involved in. So it was a great landing spot, a great next landing spot.
And you were in Oakland area
From
before?
Oakland, yeah.
Okay. Are you happy here? What do you think about Chico?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a weird 6 years. I have received many gifts, actually, by moving here. But also, it's hard. It's hard to move someplace new. It's hard to move someplace that's not urban.
Well, I hope Chico keeps giving you those gifts and we get to keep you. Valerie.
It's pretty simple for me. My parents decided to retire here, and I wanted to move closer to them and be closer to my family. I wasn't sure if I was going to stick around. I came here, was with them, and then COVID hit, and that was a weird time. And during that period, I met a lot of wonderful people. I started an ASL club where during the COVID times, we were just getting together with small groups of people and I was sharing my language with them. And I found the most receptiveness in this area. This is my favorite place to live. And I feel like, I don't know if it has to do with timing of my life. Think that timing is a big thing with relationships, with places that you live in. But just the openness and willingness to learn from each other was a big thing for me, and so I felt inspired to really settle here. So this is my home. But I am from California. I lived all over, but I don't really feel like leaving. So yeah.
Let's talk about our creative origins. So, when did you first develop an interest in pursuing your art form? And what sort of circumstances and events in your life led you to developing your creative passions?
Okay. Everyone looked at me. I actually recently was writing about this time when my brother and I, when I was like 8 or 9, we raked all the fall leaves into the floor plan of a house outside. And I was thinking about this as like a creative act, like in terms of like one of the first things, because I certainly drew and I certainly, I sang a lot. We have recordings of me like singing into a microphone, doing different things, but creating this floor plan, and then we hid all of these little toys and stuff in it. And it was right at the same time when I got my own bedroom. It was like the first time I didn't share a room with him. And so additionally, in the layout, we had our own separate spaces, which was really cool. It was like independence, and eventually it snowed, and the next spring, we forgot about it. And the next spring, all the snow melted, and we found all of these like things in the toys in the closet and little things that we had hidden. And the sort of discovery of those, the rediscovery of those things, like having an experience I didn't expect to have, is like a big part of what I feel like I do now, is like making things to serve this purpose of like letting people have an experience they didn't expect to have. And that is like an origin story in my head of sort of becoming an artist, I think.
Creative origins.
It's hard to pinpoint when that started. I've always felt creative. I loved drawing pencil and paper for a really, really long time.
What kinds of things would you draw?
I was actually really interested in just portraits. So I would try to draw somebody's face as accurately as possible. Now I don't want to do that at all, but I was very interested in that, and drawing characters from books that I hadn't seen, just kind of imagining what they would look like. And yeah, pencil with paper was just simple because you could take it with you. My family and I, we moved a lot growing up. I moved every year, and I went to 6 different elementary schools. So I didn't really feel like I could take on a lot of materials, but I always felt creative. And I think that's why currently I don't identify with one specific art form. I feel like that's always going to be an open-ended journey for me. I think that there's a million types of art forms and I want to try them all. And sometimes I think, well, if I want to communicate a message, what type of medium will effectively do that, or what feels the best right now? But I think that, I don't know, just when I was a kid and just started there, but there is a specific memory of me being told I couldn't draw on the walls. And so I found a little section in the corner of the apartment in my bedroom closet, and I drew on the walls. And I remember when we had to move, because like I said, we moved a lot, it got uncovered and I got in trouble. And I thought, I guess, I don't know, I was like, that made an impact. Maybe I just really wanted to draw on walls, and now that's what I do. Yeah. Okay, so, I mean, we'll just fast forward to mid-20s. At this point, the only thing I've taken on was now I'm using ink on paper. And I loved reading graphic novels, so I would try to make comics and just black ink on white paper, pretty simple. and affordable for me. And I was struggling living in LA and working a lot of service jobs. And I just completely changed my life and I moved to Nicaragua. And when I was living there, I started painting murals and living out of my backpack, which wasn't easy. And I don't think I could do it right now, but that's how I really just threw myself into art. So that's a definite point where it's like, yes, you're now an artist making work and putting it out there. So,
Maddie, creative origins.
I also drew all the time, kind of differently than you two did. I would just replicate all the time. I remember being a really little kid, and I had Little Mermaid bed sheets, and I would get markers and I would try to draw Ariel right next to Ariel on the bed sheet. She had like a really cool swoopy hair and really cool seashell boobs, and trying to get those curves right on the bed sheets, which I'm sure I was yelled at for at some point. But I would just always try to copy and like copy Simpsons characters and copy Sanrio characters and like whatever, cartoon comic things I was looking at the time. Also like copying all the graphic novels and comics that I had. So I was always a copier. I was always an illustrator. And then as I got a little bit older, I would like tried to inject some cool into that. Like I was like drawing like the record covers that I had, or like copying tattoos that I saw people have, like trying to like make it cool. But I was always just drawing cartoons. So just that was my origin. And I didn't do anything else until I was in my late 20s. I just thought I was going to do illustration my whole life until like 10 years ago.
So the act of creating, how would you describe the act of creating? What does it feel like when you're in it? What does it mean to you?
I mean, lately I'm like, it's like being in the weeds. I'm like in the middle of a project. Like there's so many different things that I'm thinking about, and I'm trying to wrangle them, but also like enjoy their beautiful textures and kind of let certain things come to the front and let other things fall to the back. So I feel a little bit lost in some projects while I'm kind of working on it. And then I guess the identity of different projects serves me in different ways, so they feel differently. Like I have a project that I do every year, making these resolution buttons, and that project feels very sketch-like, and I just am like, what am I thinking about? What do I want it to be? What do I want the future to be? And I can sort of do it a little bit quicker. So it sort of depends on, I guess, the parameters, or also the like scope of the project. Right. Yeah.
I forgot to tell you I got your buttons and I love them. I walked into Sign Club and they were just on the desk, and I thought, how did I figured that Dylan put it there or something. Did you get in there? It was you?
Oh, no, I set them on the outside. Someone must have brought them in.
Well, that's nice.
Yeah.
They're beautiful.
You can get these buttons if you befriend Michelle. That's how you get them. Yeah.
This is the 13th year, I think. So the fun part is people starting to see them over time, knowing and understanding what they mean to different people over time. Yeah.
Have you saved all the buttons?
Ooh, no. I mean, I have a lot of them, but the first ones were just hand-drawn buttons that I like pressed myself for many years, and so they all exist individually, like out in the world. It's like the $250 T-shirts that Maddie made.
Find them on eBay.
Yeah, the first couple of years are just like me drawing. Yeah.
What is
the act of creating?
Yeah. I knew this question was coming, and it's a really hard thing to answer because it's not a monolithic experience, right? Like creating is a bunch of different things, and everything is creating. Like making dinner. That's the hardest creative thing I can think of doing. I don't do it. That's why.
Too, yeah.
I don't do it. Like thinking of like the training routine for my dog, like everything is a creative act, and it feels a bunch of different ways. But what I will say is I'm a really desire-driven person, so if it's not fun and if it's not a joyful experience, I just won't do it, which isn't good when you have to do the thing, when you have like a commission or it's your job. So I bail pretty fast. But if you can get away with it, it feels just like joy. It's just so fun. Like making things is so fun. And there's so many different things to make. Dinner. that if you don't want to do one, there's like 20 other things you can just go do. Just pick the thing that sounds the most fun at the time and then just do that. So
I love that.
That's what I
want to
do.
live my life like that.
Me too.
There's an artist named Jessica Hish that calls it procrasti-working, because you can like procrastinate, but it's like productive projects you're working on all the time, which I think is a good term for it.
Yeah, I like that. I'll take that. The act of creating for me is kind of neurotic. Like I go into a tunnel and a good tunnel, not a scary tunnel, but like I throw myself into a specific project when I'm feeling super inspired, but it can be neurotic in the sense that like I need to see it visually. So I love taking notes. I love to write down the ideas or make the pictures, and then I have to be able to shuffle them somewhere. Like, no, that goes there, this goes there. And I will take over an entire room, and just the walls will be covered in like my crazy thoughts. So it's fun for me, but it can be a lot. And I'm lucky I have a partner who brings me food, because I'm not, sometimes I like, that's how insane it can be for me. But it comes in waves. Like sometimes I don't feel that. And I'm not the person that says, oh, just if you just go to your studio every day and you just work, just make art. It doesn't work for me. It has to come over me like a wave. And, so it's hard for me to depend on my art for my livelihood, like 100%, which is why I feel so lucky. When I say my art, my visual art, like the mural making, I don't do commission work, but if I did, maybe I'd be making more money. I don't know, but I think it's just, I don't want to depend on it in that way. I just want to feel that truly, authentically, like that wave of inspiration, and be able to lean into that when it feels good. Yeah.
What about livelihood connected to your art practice or your art skills? How's that connected or not connected?
Well, my job is very new. So I worked in coffee for like 12 years and I just quit, and I'm very sad about it. But also very happy to now be a teacher. So I started teaching at Butte last semester and Chico State this semester. So I'm very new to teaching. So I think that my livelihood is teaching, like my financial livelihood is teaching, but I teach art, which is related to that. So I guess my livelihood comes from art and skill, but teaching is a totally different thing. It's a completely different practice. What?
Teaching is art? You were
Teaching
just
is
saying
art.
that.
No, I'm saying teaching
cooking
is
dinner.
art. No, I'm saying teaching is a thing, making art is a thing. Like they're different creative acts. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
They're all very generous acts.
Oh, yeah.
Cooking dinner too.
Michelle, you are working on a book.
I'm working on a book. Yeah. I mean, when it comes to art and livelihood, I have found that like at most places I've worked, if they find out you're an artist, so like, let's say you are just doing accounting and bookkeeping, but you're drawing like a little note, like you need to put the grinder on this, and you work in a coffee roastery, they're going to be like, oh my God, that note was so cute.
Can you design our
Can
merch?
you write the first in, first out signs for the refrigerator?
Yep.
And then it sort of evolves into like, you learn that you're an illustrator. This is how I learned I was an illustrator, working in food service. I didn't learn it in school, like going to college, but I certainly started doing drawing for like commercial purposes. And it took me a long time to figure out that illustrating, I could do that for my own art, actually. It was like kind of a reversal, because I studied photography, and so I always thought like, oh, I do photo projects. And then once I started drawing for like different jobs, I was like, oh, this like makes sense to me. I can use this for talking about other things. And so communicating in that way kind of like, it sort of flipped on itself. But I have a couple different income streams. So I work at Chico State, I do the postcard machine, and then I also do freelance work. So it is like kind of a web of ways to piece it together. And I find that all of these ways are still pretty precarious. Like there isn't necessarily always a future in all of them. So you're always kind of like, oh, okay, if you can grasp something that does work, you kind of like sort of stick with it as long as it, is really good.
That makes life exciting.
Ooh.
What a positive outlook.
I mean, life is exciting.
Let's talk about aesthetic.
Yeah, I was really stumped by this question.
I don't-
'cause we saw some in advance. We saw the things in advance, and I was like, what is my aesthetic? It just seems like something I should be able to say. And then I thought, oh, if I have to tell someone an elevator pitch for, let's say, my book, okay, it's going to be black and white line drawings. It's going to be words and images. But then I was like, I have like an entire series of quilts that are like plants on them. It seems like it looks really different to me. So I guess the aesthetic kind of goes back to that idea of like what I'm drawn to and what experience I want someone to maybe have at the end, or that I hope they have at the end. So like hopefulness is my aesthetic, or like, I was like trying to name it somehow.
Would you call that like a flexible aesthetic?
Yes, but I hope to remain flexible and resilient always. So
Yeah, I guess I'm interested in like the ways that an aesthetic can limit you. Maybe that's just kind of a part of the journey as a young artist when you're striving to find yourself and wanting approval from people around you. And so you're trying to mold and control what's coming out. And I guess what I'm finding, like the older I get, I'm starting to shed those kind of ideas. I'm more interested in like possibilities. And I don't know, does that resonate with you?
Yeah, and I feel also I don't have a clear style. I think because I work in a lot of different media, and so a quilt will look very different than an illustration, which will look very different than a ceramic pot and a wooden bench. Like all of these things look very different, but we're pursuing our desires and we're following interest and curiosity. And I assume that like the exhaustion and drudgery of the world will wear us down at some point, and we won't want to be so explorative and creative, and we'll have maybe a more limited and cohesive style. But right now I see my like meanderings as a sign of energy and desire to explore, right? Like it's a good thing that gallerists can't depend on me for a reliable aesthetic. That's good. That's good. That's a good thing.
I agree with everything you said. This was one of the harder questions for me. I don't feel like I have one particular style. I also feel like I've dabbled in different art forms and they all look different from each other. I've made comics, I've painted murals, paintings, and I don't think that they can be labeled with a couple of words. It just feels like I love what we're talking about, the curiosity of a new project. And for me, that's important, is the process. And with a mural, for example, I always try to do something like a technique that I haven't done before in that mural. And so that excites me to try to accomplish that. And so every mural I've done, it's like, oh, I learned this part, or I realized I don't like doing that thing, or that combination of colors didn't really work for me. So it's always a learning experience. And I think that's what excites me, kind of like what you were saying, Maddie, just that exploration and wonder.
Yeah. But what I will say, what's interesting is I think you have a style, and like I could recognize it right away. And same with you. Like if I saw anything
I thought
that you
the same.
illustrated, anything that you
Okay,
I
wait.
could recognize it so fast. So maybe we do, and we just
don't know it.
we can't zoom out enough or something.
Yeah, and I think I had a friend once, I was asking her for advice about something. I can't remember if it was a proposal for something or it was creative, but I can't remember. And she was like, you just have to put as much Michelle Ottness into it as you can. And I was like, Michelle Ottness. Okay. And I think as I've gotten older, I've realized that like worrying about trying to do something new, and inventing something is less like on my plate and more about just being like, I'm going to bring Michelle Ottness to the table, even if it's a book, it's an illustration. It's like everyone has made all these things before. It's fine. So, yeah.
Michelle Ottness. Let's talk about practice. Do you practice your art every day? And then how do we balance and manage artistic endeavors and then all the other things in life?
Depends on how you're defining art. You know what I mean? Like,
Oh, so I guess deliberate practice.
is my dog training routine art? It is.
Yes. Yes.
I don't do it every day. I don't do it in balance. I very frequently spend all day on the couch in like a burrito blanket with my laptop making lesson plans and slideshows and worrying about like the font sizes of the slideshows. So I spend a lot of time doing that.
What's your favorite font for slides?
Helvetica, look at me.
Okay.
Come on.
Yes.
Modernism.
Same.
One time I tried like Montserrat and I was like, get out of here.
Ooh.
Absolutely not. I know.
Very
I'm sorry.
juvenile.
I know.
I don't know any of this.
Oh, just font talk.
Just font talk, yeah.
Just font stuff. I would love to have more balance. I mean, what a dream to make artwork every day. What a dream to find time for a doodle a day. But that's just not how capitalism works. Like, it's just not how living your life works. So you were talking about that idea of starting something and really tunneling into it. And I think that when I have like a specific design project or a craft project or an art project, that I will tunnel into it, and that's the only thing I do, and my partner brings me food, and absolutely I would love to, as I age, doodle a day, but that's just not realistic a lot of the time, you know. As long as you get it done, as long as once a week you check in with the other side of your brain, that's the important part, right?
You're developing your teaching practice.
Yeah,
So that is all consuming.
I'm making the slideshows.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
No.
a lot of work.
The slideshows are about art. I made a slideshow on balance in design today, so that was relevant, you know. Yeah.
How are we doing on time for our break? Break now? Okay, we're going to take a 15-minute break. Get up, stretch, go grab a drink. Oh, also, if you would like to insert a question into this discussion, there are pieces of paper. Kurt is holding them up. waving them up. Let's start off with the environments that you create in. Can you describe what that looks like, what it feels like, the environment? Do you have a studio? Well, Valerie, you have an office space
I make
downtown.
art there. Yeah. I have a few spaces that I create in. Sign Club is one of them. I have everything that I need to make a zine in there. I specifically organized it for that. All the drawers are everything I need to make a zine in one sitting if I wanted to. I haven't done it yet, but it's there. Yeah. If you want to make a zine, just come over and roll out the cart. It's my zine cart. But it's a pretty new space. So working out of there, the back room of my house or the kitchen. I just love being in the kitchen where people are. Coffee shops? I don't know.
You're a coffee shop worker.
Sometimes when I want to write, or I like working when there's a lot of noise sometimes, and I can't hear people when there's a lot of noise, me being deaf. So it's nice to just wave, okay, and then just work. When there's complete silence, that can be hard, right? So it really depends on the day. Like, do I want to work in a quiet environment, or do I want to be surrounded by noise?
I'm less sound driven and more temperature driven. So I won't work somewhere if it's cold. I can't do it. So like at our house, the ceramic studio and wood shop are in a detached garage in the backyard, and it's not temperature controlled. So if it's between October and March, I just won't do it. So that's when sewing happens. We have a little in our spare room, that's the sewing studio, or whatever paper crafts we're doing, or burrito blanket lesson planning, whatever. So anywhere that's warm, that's where I'll work. And I think, my practice is sporadic because I have 2 different jobs at 2 different places. So if I'm out at Butte, then I might do some work there. If I'm at Chico State, then I'll do some work, for 20 minutes there and bop around. Wouldn't it be so lovely to have like a giant temperature controlled warehouse that all of your materials are in and people just come to you? But that's not how it works. So yeah,
Maddie know if you have one.
I will pay $5 a month for it.
Michelle, you have a studio.
I have a studio. Oh my gosh, it's the greatest luxury of life.
Can
So
you
you have it, so I can come to your house.
Yeah, it's not an airplane hangar, which is in my last question. But no, it's not huge. But yeah, so I have a
What's
studio.
your studio look like?
My
What does it
studio
feel
looks like an office. My studio mate is here, Sarah Pape, and she taught me that to write, you need a chair. And there are many chairs in there, and I've been writing a lot.
There's actually like a surplus of chairs
There's a lot
in your
of chairs.
studio.
Yeah. So I have floated in on the wings of Sarah. Really great studio. So I work in there.
Beautiful wings to float
I
on.
know, very lucky. I work there, but lately also I really get into working in my bed in the morning, like before the sun comes up, and I get up and have been writing a bunch in the morning. So
Typing. Computer.
yeah, mostly typing, writing, because I'm writing and I'm trying to get organized because I'm working on a book. So it's like writing and drawing have been kind of like all in the same.
I'm going to just little tangent. I also like to type in bed. I can't seem to get like the angle right. And so then I was like, should I get one of those pillows that have like the back and then
It's
the
called a
arms?
It is a husband.
We can sew one for you. We have several. It's
called
called
what?
a husband.
Oh,
We can rename that if you like. It's called a spouse. Historically, it's
hear
called
you.
a husband.
They're kind of ugly.
Whoa.
Well, they're just, they also
Not
serve
all
like
of
a
them.
singular purpose.
what are you typing on? Like, are you?
oh,
do you have
just-
like a little table?
Well, yeah, then it's like then the angle of your knees.
I mean, I use a lot of different kinds of pillows.
Okay.
I had 3 behind me and 1 plus a blanket on my lap.
Okay.
If that's useful for solving this problem.
All right, back to okay. So
Ergonomics
bed,
are
the
important.
bed. I know because
Yeah.
it's warmth too.
Yeah,
Right.
it's like part of the.
There's this really beautiful book that I read one time called What Artists Wear. It's about what artists wear when they work. And there are these, I know, it's great. It really loved like 60s modernist, postmodernist artists. All of the sick flannel lined coveralls that existed in that time period. That's just like what we need. Just zip up your little snowsuit, go out to your studio, spend your hours there. Like, what a romantic notion. Right. But we don't ever actually do that. We just burrito blanket ourselves and make do, I think.
I think I'm inspired to draw you in a burrito blanket.
Okay.
I really am.
Okay, great.
A little comic.
A little collab.
You guys are cute. Okay, I'm going to really pivot here. Can you describe how self-criticism functions within your artistic process?
I recently realized that between 5 and 7 a.m., I'm like, I can do anything. This is great. I'm going for it. Those are coffee hours, by the way. Then between 7 and noon, I'm doing my job and, different things happen. Between 12 and 4, I'm like, what am I going to get done today? I'm not sure. And I'm also at my job. And then between 5 and 7, it's like dinner. And then after 7, I'm like, I don't know how I think I'm going to do this whole project. Like, why do I think that this is going to happen? And I'd become kind of spirally in this way. And I'm like, this is just like a chemical thing that happens over the course of a day.
Every day, I overestimate what I can get done in that day. And I experience the disappointment in myself every single day. What does that do over time? And
Don't do that anymore.
Think of all the things you did do, maybe. Because there's a lot of them, probably.
it's not about me. Okay, self-criticism. How does that function?
Boy.
How does that help
yeah,
or
yeah.
what
Because
purpose does
we
it
all
serve?
we all have that. I think self-criticism is a weird thing for me to think about because I don't know if this sounds gross. I don't know if I have a lot of it. I think that I embarrass really easily, really, really easily. So I don't know if I was alone, isolated in a room, if I would be plagued with self-criticism. I think what happens to me is that the idea of doing something in front of other people or of other people seeing my work, like that, it's the other people component that shuts me down and makes me not want to do a thing. Like I would rather work in isolation. I'm a really good self-hype man. That's fine. It's when other people are there that I get nervous and squiggy. So I have learned that like working alone and working in solitude is the way that I work best, which as somebody who thinks about community a lot and thinks about my impact on the world all the time, that's a conflicting thing, because I would love to be an active part of a community. I think like the ceramics community is something that's like, it is inherently social. It's like this ancient social thing, and I just would rather be like little raccoon handing by myself in a studio, and I struggle with that a lot of being too nervous to work around people, but wanting so much theoretically to work around people. So that's kind of a tangent off of self-criticism, but that's where my like sort of fear of critique, that's where it comes from.
But you have a desire to show your work often, or I mean, you do make a lot of, I see you and Jacob making a lot of things for your own life, making objects, using them, they're functional, but you have shown work. What's maybe some of the thought process that you encounter when, you're making stuff, it's feeling good, and then these other thoughts are coming in about how your work will be perceived by others?
Once I bring something to a finished state, it's less scary to show people, because I usually have a pretty clear idea of how I want them to view it. And if I show somebody, like if I can work in isolation, bring it to a point where I'm satisfied, and then go, do you think this is funny? And then get like the reaction I want, then it's like, okay, cool, I'll show that to a broad audience. That's fine. But I need to have that time to make, time to analyze, time to show someone who I have an intimacy with, who will tell me the truth, but also, do it lovingly. And then I can show everybody else. Like the idea, like there are a lot of residencies that you can go to where the public can just come in and look at you while you work. Absolutely not. No, thank you. But that's like what you trade in exchange for this residency experience, and that sounds awful to me. So,
Valerie.
I feel like self-criticism is different every day. I think that some days are harder than others. I think it's important to have some self-criticism because it means that what I think about what I'm making is important, right? So I look at this and I think, I'm not really happy with that. That's good feedback. I think it's the external criticism that can be hard for me. And I think about that a lot more because I didn't go to art school, because I'm self-taught, because everything I do is for the first time. And so I have to battle with that a lot more. Last year I actually burned a lot of my art. So, and a lot of people were, don't do that. And I'm like, no, I'm done with it. And I want to experience this fun activity of seeing it go away. And it sounds really dramatic, but it was a good experience for me. And the things that were left, there were just a couple pieces left in my house. And when I look at it, I'm like, this is what I wanted. This is what I love. I love that I made this thing. And it's good to just, move on and look at something and say, yeah, I'm going to do something different now, or I'm going to do it better. But it's that external criticism that I battle with, I think. Actually, what was really helpful for me as I read, so Georgia O'Keeffe is one of my favorite painters, because she did not give a flying, she didn't care what people thought. And I loved that. And I need to harness that energy to like move forward in the world. I think that we all have something really important to say, and we all have our own story. And I have to remind myself, like, I have value. When I read her biography, Georgia O'Keeffe, there's a part in her biography that says, it's from somebody who interviewed her, how does it feel after all these years to finally see the success? Because she spent so many years being criticized for making paintings that look different than what all of the men painted. And she responded with, and I'm not going to say it like the exact quote, but it was pretty much that the compliments and the criticism go down the same drain, and she's quite free. She feels free of that. So it's like the more value you give to the compliments, the more value you're also going to give to the critique. So you need to not think about that. But your own criticism is really important, I think.
Can I add a Georgia O'Keeffe quote in
Yes.
here? My yearbook quote was a Georgia O'Keeffe quote, and it was I know, and it was I don't know if this is exact, but I've been scared every day of my life, and it's never stopped me from doing what I want to do. And I really love that because I get scared. I'm so nervous all the time, but you just do stuff anyway, and you don't die. So you just do it, and it's fine. So
This is
usually
scary.
this is so scary. Look at all our friends. It's fine.
I haven't looked out there because I'm scared.
I think progressing through your art practice and the farther you go along, I think it becomes easier to disentangle all of these anxieties and like what you think other people are thinking and all of those fears. And, hopefully you're getting closer to the purest, expression of oughtness, roseness, hinkliness,
Hinklesque, maybe?
hinklesque. Okay, let's do some fun questions. This is a Michelle question. I actually didn't really know Michelle, and everybody was like, Michelle, and I was like, all right. And so I cold called you and said, can we hang out? And then I went to your studio and I saw all your chairs and all your Post-it notes, and we were talking about process and all the great things. And you said you had asked your students one of these questions, and here it is. What would you make if you had no constraints? No constraints at all. What would you make?
So much stuff. I would write a book, or at least a story that's been like floating in my head. I mean, I've written the story, but I want more. I would build that world out more. I would turn that into a film. Or an animation or a graphic novel. I would paint as many murals as possible, ones that raise awareness about deaf culture and inspiring people to learn ASL. I feel like everything I'm doing right now is about that. The teaching that I'm doing, the work I'm doing, the art, the visual art, it's all right now I'm like fully focused on that mission, and I want to do as many things as possible that will communicate that. The story that I have ruminating in my head that I've already written as a short story is basically like a speculative fiction about this idea of the threat, the possible genocide of deaf culture because of gene therapy, which is a very real thing that is coming about. So I'm terrified and I am inspired to tell stories. I feel like I would want to tell as many stories as possible to inspire change in the right direction. I probably would also do a giant art show that me and my partner have been talking about called Deaflandia, where you walk in and it's just, what does the deaf world look like, right? But just you walk in and everything is for deaf people. Everything is for people like me, and you have, as a hearing person, have to come in and experience that. Or maybe it's like a carnival, I don't know. Something fun and obviously visual. So, yeah.
I would love to. I was talking to somebody recently about like, what is the millennial midlife crisis? Because we're not gonna go buy sports cars probably. Like we're like the environment, we won't do that. So what is it? And the consensus was that we were all gonna homestead. Like we're all gonna start little farms and gardens. And I think along that vein, like I would love to build a house and everything in it. So I would love to build a house and then all of the furniture, all of the built-ins, all of the lamps, all of the interior design. Like I would love to top to bottom build a house and then live in it. My friend Tamara Murphy had a show here, and it was just one of the sweetest, most beautiful things. And it felt like a cross between a gallery show and a home because there were so many housewares in it. There was like lighting and lamps, and it was just such a cool thing. But it was in a gallery, and like how wonderful would it be if we could have like a contemporary reinstallation of Woman House, but instead of, women artists, it was just you and all your buds building out the entire interior of a house together, and then you invite people over and you've done the entire thing. So I think if I had no constraints, that's the thing I would do, is the whole thing.
Sounds like a great commune that I want to join, and cult.
I live in the top, in a tower, and then and then, yeah, a spire at the top, and I
A
look
hand-built
down.
tower.
Yeah.
Michelle, you were talking about an airplane hangar, or did I hear you say that?
Well, so because I have thought about this before, my main project with no constraints is a series of hourglasses of unusual sizes, and all the hourglasses have 1 hour's worth of a different object in them. So like an hourglass that would hold an hour's worth of basketballs that would fall, or an hourglass that would hold an hour's worth of feathers, or an hourglass that would hold an hour's worth of chia seeds.
This is such a good answer.
And so, like, that's my dream project. Although a student overheard me saying this, and she started, like, crunching numbers and doing math and physics and stuff. Because this is like, physics doesn't apply either, right? Because what she discovered is that the basketball one, based on her unvetted math and physics, the basketball hourglass would be like the diameter of the city of San Francisco. It would be like 7 miles to hold that many basketballs.
But there's no constraints.
There's no
Michelle, so you
constraints in this world. Yeah, in the world of this project, there's no constraints, and so you get to like walk through all these hourglasses, and they're all 1 hour's worth of whatever's in them, but they're all like, they could be this big, or like it could be dead bees. Like, it could be all these different things. But physics, yeah, there's a reason that sand is used, right? Because it actually falls, and, you know, the basketballs. And so that, but then when I thought, okay, I've told other people about this project before, you know, like maybe I should come up with something for this specific event. And in that case, it was just like an airplane hangar full of mobiles and ranunculus flowers. That was it. It just like so exponentially big that you couldn't imagine it. Those are the two.
I love that.
I know.
I love basketball.
That's great. I like basketball too. But the cool thing is that all of these people just in their own minds got to experience the installation of all 3 of our projects, right? Like some version of them, which is really cool.
What advice would you give to your younger self?
Don't wear your jeans so low.
I would say don't worry about everyone else, and that it's going to be okay. Just, yeah, that, like I said, that external criticism was really hard for me. I'm like constantly being like, no, I'm not an artist, like, you know, and I don't believe that anymore. I believe that everybody is, you know. I think that everyone has creativity inside of them, and so to go through that journey, maybe it would be less difficult, you know, if I told my younger self not to worry so much and just make what you want to make and enjoy the experience of making art, and less about the end result.
I think along that same line, I would say don't make work you don't want to make. I think for a long time I was making work that, specifically I was drawing a certain way that people expected me to draw, that people would commission me to do, like request like band merch or whatever. And I started to not like it pretty quickly, but it was the thing that people expected me to do and paid me to do and thought was cool. So I kept doing it, and people would praise me for it, like compliment me, and I would get embarrassed. I'd be like, no, it's not good, rather than taking the compliment, because I wasn't proud of it. I didn't like it. I didn't think it was interesting for a long time. And eventually I broke and stopped doing it. And now I won't take a commission I don't want to do. I won't, like, unless they give me free rein, I will say no very quickly. But it took me a really long time to do that, because there's this pressure that we put on ourselves, but also that culturally we put on people to have a specific aesthetic and to lean into it and to make reliable work. And if you don't work that way, you feel like you're bad at making work, that there's something wrong with you, that you haven't found your visual language yet, and it's just not true. So I think my advice to my younger self would be like, you don't have to draw like that. You can stop it. You can say no. You're only going to make $40 from this commission anyway. Just say no. It's fine. Just keep it moving. That's what I would say.
I just thought of my answer as you two were talking, because I was like, what would I say? I'm not sure. And I think what I've learned recently is to like share more about what I'm thinking and what I want to do. And I don't think I did that like as a kid, or like in my 20s, I think I was a little bit more quiet, and I noticed that people sort of fill in the blanks sometimes when they think I'm doing something. And I've just learned to be like, oh, I need to tell them more.
That comes with courage and knowing yourself and finding your voice. Why does it take so long? It's just such a
Does
process.
it happen? Do you find a singular voice at some point? Is that like, I mean, some people do. Some people make really reliable stuff, but I don't.
I think like, you know, when you look at other people and you see like a consistent body of work and you say, wow, they've made so much stuff. It's amazing. I'm not like that. Or maybe you say, I want to be like that. For me, I mentioned earlier, my process is not go to the studio every day and just make and then just stick with that aesthetic or that style and just lean into that and be that person. I think that we just don't know what people are going through. We don't know their journey. We don't know what got them there. And at one point in the beginning of my mid-20s creative journey, I was just inspired by a lot of comics I was reading, graphic novels I was reading, and was doing, like I mentioned, just ink on paper. And I was drawing what I wanted in this comic style, and I was very insecure about it. And I had a friend who's a very successful artist who made a huge body of work that was really beautiful and was doing great at it. And he asked to see my drawings, and I was so nervous. And I showed it to him, and he said, I'm really jealous that you get to be here at this stage of just having fun and experimenting with this, because I hate what I'm doing. And I don't want to make this anymore. I don't want to, but I'm getting commissioned and paid really well to make this thing that everyone thinks is so beautiful. And again, it's like part of that, don't worry about what other people are saying or thinking, or don't worry about what that person is doing with their creative life. And now I can say, I mean, he has happily transitioned into what he wants to make. So I'm happy for him. But he went through that phase of people looking from the outside and saying, oh, you're doing great. You don't know.
I'm going to pivot to an audience question. Let's talk about a favorite graphic novel.
I really like graphic novels that tell personal stories. So there's a few that have really inspired me. One is a 2-part graphic novel called Persepolis. Persepolis is written by, I wrote it down because I knew I like Marjane Satrapi. And it's about this girl's experience of escaping the Iranian Revolution and moving to France and losing her family. And it's really dark and sad, but real. And it was inspiring to read graphic novels like this that tell these sad personal stories. And like we were talking about earlier, it's not just comics. Comic is tied to the word like, oh, funny, right? Lighthearted. Mouse is a really good graphic novel series, also really dark, about the Holocaust, by Art Spiegelman. And then a more recent graphic novel, which was actually chosen by Chico State Book of the Year, The Best We Could Do by T. Bui. That one, visually, I liked the most, the way that he chose to use color, that they chose to use color, but the book itself, the story of their family's experience through the Vietnam War and then coming here to America, it just inspires me because I think a lot about my experience growing up in a deaf family. And I hope that one day I can make a visual comic or graphic novel animation, I don't know, telling something very personal but raw.
The most recent one that I read that I really enjoyed is called And Now I Spill the Family Secrets. It's by Margaret Kimball.
What do you like about it?
I liked that she incorporated a lot of like documents and objects and like sort of mining things that are from receipts and like to put together timelines and stuff like that. And then those drawings are within like sort of embedded in the story. And her diaries from being a kid and all these things. Not only is there big secrets to reveal, but also these like very everyday like tactile things.
Okay, here's another audience question. How do you deal with creative burnout?
It's like the come down after a big show, I feel like maybe happens for a lot of people, where you're just like pushing a lot of stuff out and then you're like, oh, now I can't, you feel depressed or something. But also I mean, we all had answers, which is like, get some sleep
Just
and
don't.
eat
Just don't
3
work
meals a
anymore.
day
Just stop.
and like take a nap. Deal with my body.
Like recognize your needs as a person, your like holistic needs as a person. Like you don't need to constantly be a creative. I think like using the term like I am a creative is helpful, but sometimes it puts this expectation and weight on you that you have to do that all the time and you can't just like watch reality TV for a second. That's fine, you can do that. So I think if I feel creative burnout, then I just let my little Mario energy bar like go back up a little bit by focusing on the all of the other parts of personhood, you know, like okay, so you can't create a body of sculpture, you don't have any ideas for drawings, like that's fine. Just write in a diary a little bit or make a dinner or, you know, do your other little person things. Sing a little song in the shower. Just do a little zhuzh, you know, a little thing. Because burnout comes from being overworked, and we can describe it as creative burnout, but it's just working too much at your job. It's just putting in too much overtime. So you need to take a little vacation and be a person. And I think that's all it is for me. So if I feel burnout, I just won't do it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think everything that you said, just taking a break and going to the things that bring you joy. I probably would just play Zelda because I love that video game. That just brings me a lot of joy. Yeah. You didn't know? It's a big thing about me. I played today.
Okay, all right, cool.
I just go access those sources of joy. I don't know, just make a list of things you really love, and then when you feel really lost or you can't think of anything to do, just look at that list. Okay, I'm gonna do a puzzle. Like I'm gonna go on a walk.
Yeah.
Sometimes it feels like when I'm burnt out, I can't think at all. And I actually have like a notebook I have 2 notebooks that are filled with just everything that I can think of that brings me joy. So it helps to open that up and think, just feel good in that moment, or think, I'm gonna go smell an orange because that brings me joy.
Oh, yeah, like a little joy act is so important, and whatever that is to you. We discovered over the break that I am a doodler, and that brings me great joy, and Michelle is not a doodler, which is very surprising to me. But like a little doodle, like a little page just full of shapes, what a joyful little act that is. And then you return to it later and you're like, oh, that is actually a lamp. Who knew? So, you know, a crossword puzzle, little act of joy, but for me, doodling a page of shapes is just get right back in there. Yeah. I'm so surprised you don't doodle.
I mean, I don't perceive that I doodle.
I don't really doodle either. I like to make lists. I like to make notes and jot down things. I jot down. Yeah.
Does that count as doodling?
Yeah.
Oh.
It's just a different lexicon.
We're doodlers.
Okay, I'm learning a language. I'm
learning
learning languages.
You're a letter doodler. I'm a shape doodler.
Okay.
Is there a way of working? I heard some things echoed, which is like you'll tunnel in, you're working. I tend to like obsess about something. One of my selfish aims of like holding these conversations is I'm trying to learn, or is there some way I could be doing something different that I can sustain my practice and that I can keep turning out work regularly and not go into these like, you know, insane fits where my life falls apart and then I have to like retreat. Everything is in disarray because I've spent all of my time, you know. Is there a different way of doing things? We're riding those waves and it feels good when it does. And so you're following that feeling. But it's like, I don't like the burnout feeling. That feels bad. So
when you're talking about that, it all sounds familiar. And also I think that it's a little bit like what Maddie was saying about I'm scared, but I do it anyway. Or I don't like the process, but I do it anyway. Or something like that. But it's something about like getting comfortable with being uncomfortable. Or, I mean, obviously we hope that you don't put yourself in danger and you're not harming yourself, you know, being in a tunnel and then like having to come out of it. But also that the process, like trusting that there is like a little bit of balance, even if it's not in the cycle of the wave isn't what you want it to be. Because I think about projects that I want to do and they can be like really long like span so long, and it's such a slow burn that like just making one button isn't going to be the project. It's actually like I'm going to have to do it every year for 25 years. So like getting used to whatever the cycle is maybe, and like figuring out how to take care of yourself in the in-betweens is sort of the best we can do.
I think that's great. Something I think about sometimes is I'm an impatient person, and when I want to do a thing, I just want to do the thing right now, even if there's a bunch of other things to do or it's 3 a.m. or whatever. My partner and I moved into a new house, and I wanted to redo all of it as quick as possible. And my partner lovingly reminded me that, like, we're going to live here a long time. Like, you don't need to do the kitchen and the bathroom and the living room all at one time. Like, just pace it out, buddy. And there's so much more joy when you recognize the value in longevity and the value in pacing. And if ever I can escape the pressure of urgency, I will try to do that. And you can't always do it because of capitalism, but when I can, that's the thing that I do. You know, because why do you need to produce all the time? Why do you need to keep working? Like, why do we feel this need to produce a regular and consistent body of work? Who is that for? Is, you know, like, if you're making work because it's in you and that's a desire, and you just feel this pressure and you need to get it out, then do it. But this idea that if I'm not making work, if I haven't made anything relevant or interesting or photographable in the past 6 months, then I'm failing as a creative person, I'm failing as an artist. What a bummer. You know what I mean? Like, maybe you just produce one thing a year and that's great. And maybe that's like too rosy of an idea, but that would be, you know, whenever I can do that, that's what I'll do.
Yeah, or it's like years.
Yeah.
It could be you make something and then you're like, I need to live for 3 years and like focus on doing things with my family. Yeah. You know, there's like different ways that we can try to accommodate it.
I love what you said about productivity. I hate that word, productivity. I read somewhere that productivity is the enemy of joy. And I think it's so true. I think if we're focused on the amount that we're producing and our output, it takes away from what we really want to do. And that pace, it's like, I think it's about what's best for you and what feels good. Everybody's different with their routines. But for me, this is kind of a newer process that feels like it's working because it's like a daily check-in. I have up in the kitchen, I have 2 lists. One is like a morning ritual and one's an evening ritual. Not every day I can do the things on that list, but I look at it and it says, drink water, right? Put away the dishes in the morning, inspired by Erin, and wash them at night. I love that, and I've been doing it. I noticed that I have like a planner. And again, I love making lists. So, and keeping track of things. It's like part of the way my brain works. And so I have a self-care list. And washing dishes, putting it away, drinking water, looking outside and watching squirrels. All these little things that make my life better. And if I look at that every day and I think, oh, I haven't checked enough of those boxes, I'm not taking care of me, and that, you know, I'm worrying less about what I'm producing because I can see that I am very busy. I can see that I am doing a lot already, and I can keep tabs on myself in that way. And, you know, not everybody wants to make a list, but you need a way to check in with yourself before you get to that point where you lose it. And so that's how I check in with myself. And if I do the things on that list, it makes me happy. It's not like washing dishes isn't a chore for me because I watch a movie while I do it, right? So I'm like, oh, my favorite TV show, I get to like watch that while I do the dishes. There's other chores that aren't on the list because I don't like them, right? So it's part of the productivity sphere. Oh, okay, gotta do that sometime. But, you know, yeah. And then that's what's been really helping me over the last year.
Let's end with one more question from the audience. What concepts are you most interested in exploring through your work?
I want to keep exploring just raising awareness through art and using art as a medium to communicate something really, really important to me. As an ASL teacher, I see what happens when the light bulb turns on and people feel that they benefit from learning a visual language and people seeing sign language differently, that this is a language for everybody, that it's a part of human nature, and it actually has been a part of us since the beginning of humanity. And so I'm very passionate about this work. This concept I will always and forever explore. The other concept is, I've been talking about joy a lot. It's thinking about how can I surround myself with joy and actually surround other people with it. And so there was an artist residency I did over at Pedal Press at the end of, gosh, what year are we in? We're in 2024. So it was the end of 2022. And they gave me this space for 2 months. And I was really stressed because I was going through a really hard time in my life. And this other mission I'm talking about is a lot to carry. And so I didn't know how I could make it. I was having one of the worst years of my life. And I thought, I just want to be surrounded by Zelda and by watching squirrels and by smelling oranges. And so I thought, well, why don't I just make that the goal? Just surround yourself with joy. And so I put everything in that room that made me happy. And it was like an immersive experience. It had a smell, it had a look. And I loved making that so much. I think about it a lot. I would love to keep doing stuff like that. Yeah.
Joy spaces.
Joy spaces. What's in your room, right?
I got to experience that. It was really special. It was just like walking into Valerie's brain. It was such a special experience. I guess I sort of have two. So conceptually, so what concepts are you most interested in? Concepts. The relationship between art, craft, and design is really important to me, and I think it should be important to everybody, and I want to talk about it all the time. So the hierarchical, boundary-driven relationship between those fields is dumb, and we should destroy it and recognize that there is art and craft and design in everything that we do and make. I would love people to feel like craftspeople and feel like designers and feel like artists and feel like those three things at the same time. So I love craft. But I also want to mention formally, the forms that I'm interested in are like blobby bodies. That's what I want to explore all the time visually. I think an ugly, blobby, bulbous bodily form is the coolest. And I think also helps to recognize that like, oh, this is so corny and gross, but like, the beauty of all bodies. But you know what I mean, like that there is interest in all organic forms, and traditional ideas of beauty don't have to exist anymore. So art, craft, and design, blobby bodies. Those are my things.
Oh gosh. So what concepts are you most interested in exploring through your work? I mean, I'm really interested in sharing with people what I've learned, and those can be really dynamic, amazing things. Most recently, I learned that all volcanoes on the planet Earth have a different chemical makeup, like their ash and smoke and everything. So every single volcano on the planet Earth is completely unique in its output, which I think is so beautiful. And so I really want to be able to like give people the experience of like how I feel when I learn something like that. So, and it can be through a quilt that I make that reflects the sky, or it can be through illustrations of like actual science topics, or it can be through a story that I tell about my brother and I making leaves, or my dad dying, or all these different things. But like that's my biggest wish, is to be true to that experience, and then, you know, the hopeful gift of like sharing that with someone.
Volcanoes, blobby bodies, art, craft, and design, joy spaces, and deaf culture awareness. Coming to you soon. So we'll end on that, and thank you so much for being here and creating this space and community.
And thank you to Erin. Thank you, Erin Lizardo. Thank you to Kurt.
Thanks again to the 1078 Gallery for holding space for these conversations. Thank you, Erin Wade and Becky Snow, for event support. Thank you, Kurt Lind, our live sound engineer. And the theme song is an excerpt from Future Fantasy by Eric Elliott.